Kyle here from allmediareviews.blogspot.com. Plans have switched a little bit this week, but I'm going to make a video hopefully soon on Mute Math. But I was having trouble tracking some of my stuff down from them. And I'm going to add something at the end of this video that's hopefully another video or two that could be coming up anyway, regarding Mr. Mike Portnoy, somewhat influence and hero at one point of mine. Anyway, but I wanted to do this video on, I guess you could just say, Daniel Johns of Silverchair, known best for Silverchair's work in the 2000s. But the reason why I'm only going to be able to really elaborate that much on that is because I'm only a fan of his music really from the 2000s. So Daniel Johns and two other guys, I could look it up I suppose, formed Silverchair in like the early 90s. They were really young. They were like I saw a thing on them, one of the YouTube, I don't know, it was Grunge or one of the other YouTube videos that does documentary bios on artists and stuff like that. They're just a trio. They've always been just a three guys. Daniel, but I don't know the other two guys' names off the top of my head. Let's just see here. Just pulling it up. It's he's the guitarist, lead singer, obviously. Ben Gilles and Chris Joannou. I don't know if Chris Joannou was the drummer. Anyway, so they released 3 or 4 albums in the 90s. They formed, what year was it? 1992. So, but yeah, they released, their debut album was Frog Stomp. That was actually 95. I thought it was a little earlier than that. So their first album came out in 95. Freak Show was 97, and Neon Ballroom was 99. They had those 3, I don't know how many sales, but they were pretty big, and I knew the name. They were coming, so 95, you think about, it was grunge, their music was grunge, your Nirvanas, your Pearl Jams, your Soundgardens, your Alice in Chains, Stone Temple Pilots, but Stone Temple Pilots wasn't really grunge anyways, Smashing Pumpkins, I don't, and then your Bushes and that kind of stuff. They were in the mix there, but they were from Australia, so maybe they didn't get shoved down our ears and our throats and everything as much as those other bands. They came a little bit later, not that much later, like Bush or whatever, Korn. The nu metal stuff was sort of, maybe they came around right around the time or just before nu metal, but I didn't like much of that stuff. Pearl Jam a little bit, their first album. I can respect Alice in Chains and Soundgarden to an extent, but even though that was my generation, I liked Nirvana for about a month and decided I didn't care for them, and everyone else just couldn't stop talking about them and everything. So Silverchair's music, what little I might have heard of it, never cared for, never really resonated with me. So then it was right around, I don't know if it was right around the time as their final album in 2007. I know this, when I saw Fair to Midland, their manager, this guy named Frank, I having a conversation. I think it was the first time I saw them at the Fine Line in 2007 in February. We were talking about music afterwards, maybe beforehand, and I mentioned power pop, how I like power pop, and I love Fair to Midland. He's like, if you like power pop, you might want to check out the Dissociatives. And I don't know who he was talking about. I wrote the name down. But then not that long after, I know the first 2 singles of their newest album, which would be Young Modern, came out, and a lot of people were talking about that. So they also talked about, and I think I'd already heard Dissociatives maybe around that time, and it's like, well, maybe I'll like this because I like this project he's done, the singer Daniel Johns from Silverchair. And so I did. I mean, I checked out Young Modern and Dissociatives, and then eventually checked out Diorama, the first album they released. And I found out that David Bottrill, who'd worked with Fair to Midland, they mentioned that too, talking to Frank and the Fair to Midland guys on that album, Fables from a Mayfly. And he'd worked with King Crimson, Peter Gabriel, Tool, I'm not much a fan of, but, I respect somewhat. I Mother Earth, a lot of other people. David Bottrill worked with Silverchair and Daniel Johns, or just Silverchair. So, I only really like the 3 Daniel Johns releases that I know of, that I'm thinking of, from the 2000s. Diorama from 2001. The Dissociatives, his collaboration with Paul Mac from 2004. And then Young Modern from 2007. So, and I was just revisiting these 3 records today, And I mean, the thing is, I know Van Dyke Parks who worked with the Beach Boys and a lot of other people, is known for his sort of orchestral string symphonic arrangements with pop music. He worked with them on, I think he worked on both these records. And David Bottrill both was involved in both these records. I think he did a lot of the production and engineering on Diorama. And I know he worked on this. I listened to a podcast with him like 9 months ago, and he was talking about that. I'm not sure if he was involved in the Dissociatives. I'd have to look at the credits, but anyway. So just to give my favorites and stuff. So I think between these three, a lot of people praise this record. I know I have a friend that this is his favorite record of all time, Diorama from 2001. Kimbra loves it. It's been mentioned. It's clear to me this is the worst of these three. I like a lot of this album, but I prefer these two over it. I for the longest time, I kind of was going back and forth. I couldn't really decide which one I like most. To me, clearly now, while I like a lot of this album, it's not as good as either of these two albums for me. So, but I'll say this. There's some really great symphonic orchestral arrangements on this. The songs that don't include the grunge, the power chordy, grungy, grindy sounds, and he's singing kind of in that style, that like he's constipated, Daniel Johns. Those songs I don't typically go for, other than I think it was Lever, or no, Too Much of Not Enough. That one, there's some piano in that, and there's enough other elements in the music that I like a fair amount of that song. But Across the Night, The Greatest View, the first four songs I enjoy, all of them. All of them have some kind of symphonic, vocal harmonies, that kind of stuff. One Way Mule, I can skip that song from now on. I haven't listened to this album in a long time. Tune In the Brine is great. The climax in that track is wonderful. My favorite thing, Love of Your Life, sounds like a sort of very like a ballad. It's a ballad. It's a pop. Almost sounds like a Queen thing. Like Love of My Life. Off of Night at the Opera, Love of My Life, Freddie's singing. That's not the name of the song, but it's similar. But this is I know this is a promo I got here, and their first truly great album from Kerrang. But there's a DVD for Across the Night, The Creation of Diorama. I don't know if this version I have here. And I was listening on Spotify. Yeah, this doesn't include... I don't think this is an enhanced CD, so maybe it does have the footage. I haven't watched it. I should watch it some point, just to see David Bottrill, too. But here's your book. I know that with this record, because they had the three other records which were pretty significantly different. Daniel Johns, and maybe the whole band, especially Daniel Johns. The book is not exactly in the best shape, unfortunately. Hopefully I don't ruin it too badly. Oh geez, yeah. I need to get another copy of this because this has been damaged, unfortunately. I mean, not terribly. I mean, if I saw this on vinyl for a reasonable price, I would buy it, but I could see people having to spend between, $40. It's an hour long. Well, the last track is like 3.5 minutes, and then there's a hidden track at the last couple minutes. It clocks in at 10 minutes, the last track. But I was also thinking today, I wonder if both Casey Crescendo, the Deer Hunters, Casey Crescendo was a fan of this record. I think I remember seeing him once quoted about it, or he mentioned it or something, because some of the elements, some of the sort of template of some of the extreme elements with symphonic, orchestral, pop, and rock fit a lot of the Deer Hunter music, just like this album does. At one point I was like, is this like orchestral grunge? Because there are a couple moments here where they go into the grungy stuff and then they have the string section. So, I like this record a fair amount. My Favorite Thing's another one, especially with Van Dyke Parks and everything involvement. And so, this Dissociatives came out 3 years later. I don't know if it's probably coming on the heels of his experience making, more kind of clean, melodic, straightly emphasizing melodic sense music, Daniel Johns. And Paul Mack, to be honest, I don't remember his background. The thing is, he's done some other music. I think he's been done producing. But this record, though, I think this is the one that sort of got me, when I did hear it, I heard all three of these. This is the one I went back to the most. And the songs are shorter. I didn't even show this. The songs are shorter in some ways, and they're more concise, but here's the booklet. I liken it almost to Jellyfish. I mean, it's not as good as either Jellyfish record, but it's really catchy and it's almost like sunshine music, you could say, but electronic at points, a lot of synthesizers. Actually, the other band that it kind of reminds me of is Call Florence Pow, and Call Florence Pow actually had released their two releases were before this. I don't know if Daniel or Paul Mack had ever heard of Call Florence Pow, but or even Cell for that matter. But I like every song on this record. Some more than others. Angry Megaphone Man and Thinking in Reverse. That the piano use in that is great. Or it's more like keyboards, but we're much preferred customers. Somewhere down the barrel. Horror with Eyeballs. I mean, there's little hooks. There's hooks spread throughout most of the songs on this record. And the energy is great. The flow. None of the songs go on too long, but they build the sections that you really like that just have this energy and this force and energy and just uplifting kind of just like Jellyfish or like Toy Matinee to an extent. I don't know. I know that the Beach Boys element, and maybe Queen, Daniel Johns had been listening to a lot of that stuff when Diorama had come out, he was listening to that too. But it's very consistent, and I think for people that don't know this, that like Jellyfish, the Dissociatives album is definitely worth hearing. You might not like every song. I like every song, but it's a power pop gem in a lot of ways. It's like electronic synthy power pop at points. A lot of just like choruses that you can't get out of your head. Na 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 na. It's great energy, great hooks, great songwriting on it throughout. So I don't know Paul Mack, what he's done. I know that there was some talk that him and Daniel were going to release one new song. That was like 5 or 6 years ago. And Daniel Johns, since the sort of close of Silverchair, has done other stuff, but he hasn't shown up. Me and a lot of fans would love for this to happen, even if Silverchair never gets back together. So then that was 3 years later, they released Young Modern, as I was telling. And I have grown to like this more and more. Is it a perfect record? No, Young Modern. But I'll say this. That suite of Those Thieving Birds Part 1, Strange Behavior, and Those Thieving Birds Part 2 probably is my favorite thing Daniel Johns ever did. That is a masterwork. It's just... It's a perfect suite of tracks. The flow, the energy, kind of the quirkiness, but I get the chorus stuck in my head. But there's a ton of just well-crafted, sort of melodic, symphonic at times pop tunes on here that aren't as straightforward sell-up bubblegum pop. It is clever pop at the same time, but from Young Modern Station to Straight Lines especially, on Reflections of a Sound, those three, and then if you keep losing sleep, then you can see the track list. This all three of these records, their opening tracks all really work well to me. The difference being, I think, this record, the second half, a little bit like Muse in the Glass Animated Kites, has grown on me over time. What is it? Waiting All Day. That's like a power ballad kind of. That's a little chiller. Mind Reader is very kind of riffy. It's odd, but I think that's the one. Yeah, that's the one that reminds me of the rhythm and the riff in the last couple of minutes. Daniel's vocal style sounds like Deep Purple's like Space Truckin' almost. That come on, dun 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 dun, come on dun dun dun, come on Space Truck. Mind Reader has a similar kind of energy and riff to it, a rhythm also. Insomnia and Low and All Across the World is a perfect ender, and it has more of the symphonic elements that Diorama had, but the grunge element is next to nowhere on this record, and that's why I think it's like they took a lot of the ideas of what they were doing with pop and orchestral arrangements on Diorama and perfected it on Young Modern. I know a lot of people feel differently. They like both. They like Young Modern, but Yeah, this is one of those albums that came. It did come with the enhanced CD. You know, and I never got to see Silverchair live. And the thing, it's one of my concert regrets. I could make a list of those at some point. Like I never saw. I did see Janelle and Foles that one night, but I never saw them live. But they did come and play Minneapolis on this tour. That would have been the time for me to see them. And I had to be in San Francisco, or in Oakland actually, for my cousin's bat mitzvah. I think it was my cousin's bar mitzvah. I can't remember which one of them was. It was in 2007. I will never forget their appearance. I think it was on the Tonight Show with Leno. Pretty sure, where Daniel Johns, they're singing straight. He's going into straight lines and his voice cracks and he basically loses his voice. It was uncomfortable to say the least. I felt so bad for him. But I have the vinyl, which I bought within the last year, because I know Vinyl Fury, Dan from Vinyl Fury bought it, and I didn't realize it even had been issued, and I was like, I'd try to sort of look into that. I think he got a good deal on it, so I did too, and I can show that again quickly. I haven't obviously listened to it, of course, and that is in another life, in another generation, another decade for me, although we have turned the decade now, the last couple of years, but I think it's blue. Yeah. Yeah, that suite is just, oh man. I mean, this is progressive. To me, this is them doing prog in a lot of ways. It's just, there's so many twists and turns on this record. I guess if they never released anything else, I mean, I didn't think about it at the time, but you know, they went out on a really high note. Now, I have checked out what Daniel Johns has done since. He released a solo record, which was his attempt at sort of trying to do neo-soul, soul. It just wasn't, the songs were, it just wasn't working for me. They weren't not my cup of tea. And then he did a collaboration with one of the guys from the band Empire of the Sun, I think it was. And that was sort of a little better, but again, it wasn't like this stuff at all. And I know he was doing some sort of orchestral thing, like a string project. He was going to interpret music for an orchestra or something like that. He did that, and I posted on the blog. It was like 8-9 years ago. I got a bunch of people that found it too, because it was getting lots of hits, but I don't know if it really fully transpired into any physical release. I think it was just a video, maybe. It was a live performance. And then I know he was involved with Kimbra, I want to say on the Golden Echo. He was a guest on, he either sang or played, I think he may have played guitar on one of the tracks, maybe one of the bonus tracks. So, of course, Kimbra being from down under herself, New Zealand, but then she's resided in Australia. But yeah, I don't know. They always said they were in indefinite hiatus, you know. That was 10 years ago. If they never do anything again, it's fine. I just would love to see Daniel Johns do music that's in this style maybe again. You think about the progression from the stuff they started all the way up to here. Or, frankly, even if Silverchair doesn't do anything, I would love to see just like one more album from the Dissociatives. I mean, we're getting the next Sculptured album finally after whatever it's been, 13 years. How about the Dissociatives? One song at this point. Paul Mack is on Twitter, but I think he's a producer. So, I don't know. It may not happen again. There's a lot of people that have been influenced by Silverchair, of course. And but the thing I was going to add here is that one of the bands, when this album came out in 2007, some of the people on his forum were talking, Mike Portnoy's forum, the people were talking about this album a fair amount. Like me, a lot of people didn't care for the grunge stuff, or even they did, but they were like shocked how different they'd sound. Talk about evolution and progressing. It's such a dramatic difference between Frog Stomp and Neon Ballroom to this album. But one Mike Portnoy, you'd think, including and also the 89.3 The Current never played anything from this. But one Mike Portnoy loved Muse. He loves Muse still. Muse was the band that some people were comparing this to. I can see that. Muse, of course, around that time, The Resistance released a highly orchestral, pop rock album. So I can understand why Silverchair would be a band Mike Portnoy might enjoy, especially the stuff. And he knows David Bottrill. David Bottrill worked with them on Scenes from Memory. He mixed some of did a mix of that album. And he probably knows David Bottrill's worked with a lot of the other bands I listed off earlier, Crimson and Tool, and I Mother Earth. So I've never seen, maybe he has, but I've never seen Mike Portnoy talk about his interest, his take, whether he never cares for anything, his take on Silverchair, and I'd love to hear it sometime, or the Dissociatives for that matter. I'd love to see him make a comment. Maybe he has. He's doing the albums of the year list like we've been doing on the Dream Theater forums. I did in my blog. When he gets up to 2001 or 2004 or 2007 for these, or for that matter, when he gets into the 90s, maybe he'll list some of them. But that's my other idea. I'm thinking that I should make a video of what I know, and I've followed Mike Portnoy's comments and social media and Twitter and his forum posts and Heroes of the Day, you know, and even interviews and stuff like that going back to the 90s. I've followed him pretty religiously. And so, especially his taste, because he's influenced my personal taste so much, I always like to see what he's listening to. And I've never seen him mention anything about a lot of bands. I'm surprised. And a lot of other things, like Star Trek. Mike Portnoy ever done anything with... What's his take? Maybe he talked about the original series once or twice, but he loves Star Wars. He's a George Lucas fan, but I don't remember him ever mentioning Star Trek. Maybe he's not a Trekkie. Maybe not. But so I'm thinking I might try to make a video and just come up with a list of like 10 to 15 bands, albums, and then maybe other media like movies and television that I'd love to hear, and I'm kind of surprised I've never come across anything. The Monkees, I asked that question and got someone to ask him that question. He made a comment. And then, of course, they covered Pleasant Valley Sunday, him and Neil Morris and Randy George on one of the Neil Morris's albums. So, one of the covers albums I think they did. There was like a bonus track. So, he loves the Beatles, and, he's talked about some of the other bands from the 60s. I'd never heard him talk about the Monkees, but he mentioned, he liked them and the psych pop element to their music. But, so yeah, I should come up with a list, because, it's not really obscure stuff, but I'd be surprised. But like Ben Sinister, he did mention, and that was a really great thing to see. But there's a lot of other music, like Fair to Midland be another one, top 15 or top 10, 15, 20 bands or albums that I'm surprised Mike Portnoy has never talked about. And I'll come up with that list and then just give a few comments why, and, tag it, and, maybe he'll find the video, or maybe I'll tag it on Twitter and Instagram and he'll find it on there. But anyway, thank you for watching. What's your take on Silverchair? Do you like the early stuff? Do you like the recent stuff? Do you like all their stuff? Do you think Diorama's their masterpiece like some people? Or do you think, like me, or what's your take on Dissociatives? But thank you for watching. Please give it a like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.